Hi everyone, so my name is Janine. I am this year's Loeb Fellowship with the Morris Museum. I'm working in the marketing department also to increase diversity engagement. And here we have one of our artists who are actually in the Dissonance exhibit. We have Elizabeth Menzie, Liz Menzie. Did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself just a little bit more, Liz?
Sure. So Liz Menzie, I am a self-taught photographer, and I've been fortunate enough to be included in the Dissonance exhibit, where I currently have two portraits that I've taken back from November 2019. So very excited and proud of that, obviously. But just a self-taught photographer, I'm a hobbyist, so I do not get paid for my work fully, though I have been paid for a few images, and I just purely do it for the fun of it all.
Awesome. So you said you're self-taught. What really kind of pulled you into the direction of getting into photography? Did somebody inspire you? Was it just one of the things you kind of took a class in high school and then it developed from there?
I was actually telling someone recently, um, as I was growing up, my mother, who's Jamaican, one of the things that she would do whenever we would visit Jamaica is that she'd bring a lot of the disposable cameras back in those times. And we just always take a bunch of photos. And I think for me, one of my favorite things to do with her now is just kind of like sit down and sort through those photos. Like she has like this big box of like albums and like loose photos. And we'll just go through and just like reminisce on like, years that passed. And so she has always kind of been with a camera, though it's not a fancy digital, whatever camera. She kind of always had that, in her hand, and that kind of, led me to love imagery very much. Um, I may have taken like one class in high school, one class in college, just because it's like to hit your prerequisites. But I never did anything seriously until it was about maybe 4.5 years ago or so. A friend of mine like loaned me his camera and said, you actually have a really good eye. You should think about getting a camera, and ended up selling me his at the time. And so that's how I kind of got a hold of a camera for myself, and I started taking images there. But I didn't really start getting serious about photography until about 2.5 years ago.
That's awesome. I'm a film major myself, so I definitely get the experience of it all and the newness and wanting to capture images. Something that it says in your bio and your website is that it's important to you to show the images not super likely to be seen in Western culture.
Mhm.
What does that really mean to you, and why was it important for you to emphasize these things?
Yeah, so as a Caribbean American, as a Black woman, it's very important for me to highlight the importance of representation, not just for myself, but for everyone else. And, combining that with my desire to just like see the world and travel, and my, quench my curiosity for seeing everything that's out there, just wanting to make sure that we're not just, seeing kind of what, floods our Instagram feeds and our Facebook feeds all the time, where you can, everyone starts to look the same. I don't know if you're noticing that lately, but it's just like, we all have the same body. I'm confused. For me, it's, thinking about different ages, like young individuals, older individuals. I think there's a lot of ageism that happens a lot. Looking at darker skin,
Yeah.
especially in photography, I think a lot of people struggle with taking images of darker skinned people. And it's not that hard. You just have to train yourself on how to actually capture, their skin tone. So just making sure that I show those type of images of different skin tones and different features that we're not necessarily seeing all the time. Because for me, representation is key.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually really glad that you mentioned the different skin tones, because I was at a film camp one summer before I got to college, and it was very interesting to see when I was actually on screen acting for a change, and how the everything had to shift when I got there as like the sole Black person on this set. Just even shooting from, hey, I know we were shooting all the girls on this side of the street, but you might have to move over a little to compensate for you blending in with the tree or things like that.
Mhm.
And then especially with these shooting, you shoot a lot in black and white in that medium. I feel like capturing even just the different dynamics and making sure it's not like washed out or something. I feel like that's definitely like a lost art in making sure that, the different shades of black are even represented in this rich and historical form. Is that a little bit to why you like the black and white photos a lot? Just like the timelessness and the classic of it?
Oh, for sure. I always loved black and white for that very reason. I think there's also like a nostalgic feel that comes with it as well. But for me, if I can be honest, for black and white just eliminates a lot of information and eliminates a lot of noise. For
Yeah.
me, I can get very easily distracted by a lot of colors and a lot of things that are happening. And so switching over into black and white. So I actually shoot in black and white. I don't shoot in color then.
Oh,
So it just helps me to kind of focus in more on my subject and making sure that they're properly highlighted in my image, opposed to kind of being distracted by everything. And I think one of the images that you mentioned that you like in Cuba or anywhere really where they're kind of known to have like insane color and it's just insanely beautiful. I think photographers should challenge themselves to shoot in black and white in those type of areas, because you're used to seeing all the pretty colors, but look at it from a different view.
for sure. I think that's so interesting. I do hear a lot of photographers start with color and then go black and white. But nowadays, you really don't even see many people particularly go for the black and white thing in first. I
Right.
think the new movie on Netflix, Malcolm and Marie, is one of the first modern movies to be intentional about using it. But to a degree, I almost feel like it's like such a lost art almost. But
Yeah.
that being said, since you mentioned some of your images, I'm going to go ahead and start screen sharing just a couple of pieces that really stood out to me. This was actually the piece that we were talking about right before, when she was just like in Cuba with all the colors. And
Mhm.
what I really liked about this image is I think you hit it on the nail. It's that because usually this would be such a bright color and so much like flavor. But yet, even in black and white, I don't know if it's her smoking the cigar, but I still feel that richness coming through some of the sass of just the photograph. And I still feel like it's lively. In, in black and white. So were you just kind of, I guess, what's the story behind this photo? Were you just kind of walking around? Did you ask her to pose?
Yeah, so actually, I was walking around in Cuba, in Havana, Cuba, actually. And you'll find that if you do go to Cuba, or I noticed this in Colombia as well, there are going to be women dressed in like traditional garb, kind of just, sitting around waiting for, and, tourists like myself to come and take photos of them. And typically I don't. But I just really just loved how she, the backdrop, right? So she's actually sitting against a door, and so I am obsessed with doors, on like old doors. And so just, the door and just the structure there. And then just the details on her dress, like the lace and then the different like satin pieces. I love that, the head wrap and everything. And just as she was an older woman too, I just really love that with her jewelry and everything. And so she knows her body, she knows how to pose. She's technically a model, right? And so, she saw me and said, "Hey, can I take a photo of you?" And she agreed. I did have to pay her. So that is something that, people do have to do. You have to pay these individuals to take photos of them, which I didn't mind. It came out beautiful, and, showing it to her, and she was like, "Oh, okay." She was kind of, she liked it too. So that's pretty dope.
That's awesome. And really, you like captured even the fine details of the door. Like I'm really seeing that. I feel like that's something that could definitely like be lost, but everything just really comes to the forefront.
Thank you.
Um, moving on to some of the other images of your work, one that I really thought was particularly strong was this picture with the man in the crown of thorns.
Yeah. So I love this. This is actually taken, oh man, at Afropunk, and I'm just trying to remember what year because I don't even know what year it is now. It's
All
just a
blending together.
blur, right? I don't know if this is my last Afropunk or not, but a music festival held in Brooklyn, um, predominantly Black individuals. Or people of African descent, I should say. But obviously it's music, so it's open to each and every person that exists on this planet. And so, you have a different variety of individuals. But I do again like to focus on individuals who are not necessarily seen always in, in photography or in film and things like that. And I saw this individual and I just loved just the strength that he had, just with, what he was wearing, just like what he was adorning himself with, the jewelry, the headpiece, the nose piece and everything. And he was, just walking around like you do at a music festival. And I just said, "Hey, can I take a photo of you?" And I definitely asked to do like a profile shot, kind of like saw it in my head. And I just kind of took it. It's just a pretty strong image. I like this one a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely you mentioning it profile. I feel like it's even stronger because you see kind of like the depth of everything. You can really see the crowns protruding,
Yeah.
as opposed to if it was straight on. I think it definitely creates like something that's stronger and just really resonates.
Right.
So this is definitely one of the ones I saw. I think this little boy, oh, I don't know why it's not working, but this little boy over here.
So this is actually my little cousin. He's from
Oh,
Trinidad, and I met him for the first time this not this January, actually last January 2020, when I went to Trinidad. And so my paternal side of the family is from Trinidad, and so very excited to just like meet the different bits of family from there. And this was my first day meeting this individual, and so he's confused. He doesn't know who's like this, American who's like acting all crazy and excited to see him for absolutely no reason. So I remember, asking him if I can take a photo of him, and so one, he's now having probably a camera stuck in his face for like the first time ever by this person that he's just met, but he's like told that it's his cousin. So there's like that confusion, but curiosity in his eyes, and just like the youthfulness of his eyes, and just like his mouth just being parted open, just slightly parted. He was just sitting, and I just said, "Can I take your photo? Don't do anything." So I don't really necessarily posed him. He was just kind of looking at me. Um, Literally my favorite photo to date.
but I think it came out so good, or just like, I don't know, something about his eyes, just
Yeah.
that of emotion of, well, I guess in this case it's like, who is she? But just like
Right.
the pure innocence of staring back at this camera. I just love it, honestly. So
Thank
for
you.
sure.
I am obsessed. I look at it quite often.
It deserves to be seen, for sure. So you've actually been super, super great. I just have two more questions for you
Yeah.
before we wrap up. So you mentioned you were Caribbean American and I think from Jamaican descent. How does that play just a part in the type of imagery you've seen? Like I heard you and your mom looked at old pictures, or you just visiting your cousin. How does that really influence what you're looking to do as a photographer?
Yeah, great question. So, COVID has really impacted kind of how I was going to pursue my art in 2020 and going forward. And so, really struggling to kind of rethink how I was going to go about my art, honestly. Being of Caribbean descent, mom from Jamaica, dad from Trinidad, it's just important for me to kind of revisit my roots. And I've lived in Jamaica, fortunately, and I've visited many times. And so, but I've never been there with a camera purposely to go and capture, my people, my town, even my home. So little things that are constantly changing and being influenced by American culture, right? I want to capture all of that before it becomes too American. And so that was truly the plan for 2020, but unfortunately I wasn't able to do that. But just, being from the Caribbean, it's just important for me to just capture different faces, and capture Black faces, and share that with people and tell the different stories too. Especially in my town in Jamaica, I think whenever anyone talks about Jamaica, they talk about Kingston and things like that. And there is so much more to Jamaica than Kingston, and there's just so many more stories outside of Kingston itself. And so being able to share that with the world was something that I am still looking forward to doing. I hope that this year is the last year of this madness, and I can travel soon. But just being, you know, um, Caribbean American has just inspired me, one, to just tell my people's story, but also explore stories of people outside of America as well, not just in Jamaica or Trinidad.
Yeah, I've seen you been like kind of all over the world, and I'm honestly shocked. I'm like, wow, she's gone to so many cool places.
I'm
Per-
still trying to go somewhere, and I'm just like, ah.
It's so hard. I really hope that 2020 turns around for everybody, but particularly you, because I want to keep up with your work and see the things that you're doing.
Yeah.
And particularly what I love is that you shoot. I was thinking about this as you're talking. You shoot these photos in black and white, but you give so much dignity to people of color. Um, and like even in the BLM protest pictures that you have, even in different countries, you don't really portray, I feel like, the sadness of some of the stereotypical images somebody might show of somebody in Africa. Or I
Yeah.
think one photographer was like, people abuse almost the most vulnerable moments that some of these children, these Black faces are in. But
Yep.
for you, I feel like you're actually treasuring and uplifting, if they're not the most joyous moments, just the realistic moments of life, or just the different depths of emotions that appear, the complexities of people. So that was, I was like, oh my gosh, I think this is what really speaks to me. So I thought that was awesome.
I really do appreciate you saying that. That means a lot. I think I had a friend once that said the hood is an aesthetic. And I didn't understand what he was saying at the time, but I think now you kind of see it, right? Where um, the hood and just like Black faces are just shown to tell one particular story and one story alone. And I think that is very stifling. And I encourage artists, both Black and non Black individuals who are photographers or just artists in general, to shy away from doing that. Um, because it's just not good for us. So
Yeah. Well, then my last question for you before we close is just, what advice do you have people to starting out? Maybe that little middle school who wants to pick up her own camera and teach and become self-taught, or maybe it's a new college student. What would you tell them?
shoot everything. I remember I recently kind of removed a lot of images from Instagram because I felt that it wasn't leading, it wasn't serving the brand that I was trying to put forward. So right now there's like 6 images on there, but um, I started out taking pictures of flowers, and then I started taking pictures of buildings, right? Like, you encourage yourself to just shoot, go out, take photos of ice, take photos of snow. And just eventually you'll kind of find your path, right? Don't be obsessed with trying to find your niche right away, because you have to just allow yourself to grow as an artist, grow as an individual. As your personal interests change about life, your interest in photography most likely will change as well. And so be open to all of that and kind of let your eye and your imagination guide you. Don't get so caught up in having a niche. And I think that's a luxury I had by not being professionally taught or taught in school. I wasn't necessarily molded into like a particular space or felt like I had to go in one particular direction. So yeah, just shoot absolutely whatever until you kind of land on a category where you're like, this is it.
Oh, I love that. But thank you, Liz, so much. This has been a great conversation.
Thank
And
you.
audience, I really hope that you enjoyed it and just kind of see just the different flavors that Black and white photography can bring you, and just how this medium can open up your eyes to the world and have you focus on different things, different stories to tell, but still bring that classicness. So, all right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I hope you come back again.
Me too.
For sure, for sure. All right, well, if you want to check out Liz's work, hers is in the Dissonance Exhibit. The date should be up on our website for when they will last be airing. But until then, I will see you all later.